Spoilers, the following video is mostly intended for humor. I nitpick, make jokes, and generally just have fun pointing out things that don't quite add up. That said, I may make a few actually valid points along the way. I'll leave it to you to decide which is which. Welcome to the channel, I'm Hayes. I talk movies all day, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today, I want to talk about Mission Impossible, the 1996 action spy movie that by now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have forgotten was actually based on a TV show that ran for 7 seasons from 1966 to 1973 and another 2 seasons from 1988 to 1990. A grand total of 206 episodes, and Ethan Hunt is not in a single one of them. So how this works is I'm going to go through the movie and point out all the interesting things that I can find in Mission Impossible. So the movie starts off with an interrogation scene that introduces us to the type of work the team is involved in. And we also get the first big reference to the original TV show, the mask pull. Now apparently one of the things that the fans of the original series liked about it was that a lot of it felt real. So it is fitting that in this movie the mask pulls were done entirely using practical effects. Though as it would turn out, this is the only Mission Impossible movie where the mask pulls were done entirely with practical effects. Oh well. Also, Claire has been given something to slow her heart rate down so that she appears dead. Now they don't say what it is, but I'm guessing it's some kind of beta blocker. In any case, I'm going to ignore the fact that Jack says she's already been under too long, because that could just mean too long for their personal liking and not necessarily too long for a revival drug to work. However, when Ethan does give her the revival drug, he gives her this. So I asked ChatGPT what this is, and ChatGPT said this is insulin. And if that's true, Claire died in this scene. But to be fair, it's not really clear what they gave Claire. What is clear is that the 2 vials have 2 different lot numbers and 2 different expiry dates, which would be pretty accurate for medication, especially when produced in large batches. So I guess the question now is, why are they producing so much? I mean, I know they're spies and all, but are they really pulling so many people into a fake death that they need multiple batches of this revival drug? Anyway, now we get the second big reference to the original TV show, the theme music by Lalo Schifrin. Now here's the thing, you might not know the name, but you know his music. Lalo Schifrin is responsible for some of the most legendary pieces of music in film history. I'm talking Bullet, Cool Hand Luke, Dirty Harry, Enter the Dragon, Starsky and Hutch, Rush Hour, and since we're talking about a spy movie today, let's not forget my man turned up on Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow too. So yeah, if you don't know the name Lalo Schifrin, you got some homework to do. So this is another staple of the original TV show, where Jim Phelps would be given a tape with a secret mission on it that would then self-destruct after it's been played. This always struck me as an odd way to deliver a secret mission. I mean, how would you know someone ain't behind him with a pair of binoculars? And unless every single person involved in getting the tape to Phelps is on the CIA payroll, how you know someone ain't gonna try and steal the tape? Furthermore, what happens if Phelps decides not to accept the mission? Do they make another self-destructing tape and do this whole process again? Also, this is 1996. Smoking was still allowed on international flights departing from the USA as long as the flights were longer than 6 hours. Now Chicago to Prague is around 10 hours flight time, so this tracks. Though, that is of course assuming Phelps was on his way to Prague. Phelps was already on the plane before he knew about the mission, so he could have been on his way to Kingston for a well-deserved Caribbean holiday after 30 years of service. And then the CIA, knowing full well he would always say yes, decided to take advantage of his good nature and interrupt his plans. And now that I'm thinking about it, that might explain some things that happen later on, because I'd be pissed off too. Oh, and by the way, flight time from Chicago to Kingston is about 6 hours and 15 minutes, so he'd still be allowed to smoke on a plane. So the idea behind the exploding chewing gum isn't really that far-fetched. There's actually a lot of materials that are perfectly safe when apart but become dangerous when combined. What is a bit of a stretch though is, why doesn't it explode right now? The 2 ends are literally touching each other right now. Also, I can't fault Mission Impossible for this because it seems to be an American thing. But why do you say cappuccino machine? Those machines make at least 4 different types of coffee drinks. That's like calling a computer a word processor. Actually, come to think of it, we all should probably stop saying mobile phone. Anyway, this whole scene is really well made, especially watching it again and seeing some of the little details they sprinkled around. Here's the thing though, later on we find out the knock list Galitzin just took was a dud, which is fine, but right now they all think this is the real deal. So shouldn't a task force specializing in missions the CIA deemed to be impossible be just a little skeptical as to why a list containing the real identities of CIA field agents is so easy to steal? I mean, dude just practically walked in and took it. So in this movie starring Tom Cruise, Emilio Estevez plays Jack Harmon, which is a relatively short role, gets killed off and in the end doesn't get credited. Now in 1988, Tom Cruise had an extremely short role in Young Guns where he also gets killed off and also not credited in the end, and that movie starred Emilio Estevez. Anyway, right now Ethan is watching the image from Jim Phelps's camera, the camera hidden in his glasses, the glasses that he is wearing. And considering that is a pretty close-up image of the gun, Jim got shot in the face, definitely above the chest. No way you're that close and still only hitting stomach. Also, this is the part where it's clear that even in 1996, the CIA already had much more secure ways of sending messages than a self-destructing tape given to an airline stewardess. And if Ethan Hunt was so perceptive as to spot there was another team on the job, dude really should have clocked that Jim couldn't have been shot in the stomach and this whole operation was a setup. No fish were harmed in the making of this scene. They actually replaced the real fish in the tank with rubber fish that flooded the streets. However, Tom Cruise really did run with water flowing out behind him. So this is a simple but effective way of knowing if someone is approaching the apartment. But why would Ethan Hunt stay at that apartment? Right now he's on the run from the CIA, so perhaps the worst place to stay is your registered safe house. Back in 1996, Max.com did exist. It was a site belonging to Integrated Technologies and Systems Group. Though, to be fair, it is possible that Max.com only came about after this movie. Anyway, what definitely existed in and before 1996 is the word job. Searching job on the internet would have yielded a lot of results. And not gonna lie, almost none of them would be related to actual employment. 1996 was before Safe Search. If you know, you know. Also, another thing that existed in 1996 was email addresses. @job3:14 would not have been sent anywhere. But whatever, let's assume in the Mission Impossible universe email addresses use colons. Then in that case, Ethan just sent the same person the same message in different languages. There was no need for that.
No, I got out of the car. I ran to the bridge.
Okay, timeline check. Ethan passed the car with Claire sitting in the driver's seat while walking towards the bridge. Ethan gets to the bridge, no one is there, turns back the same way he came and then sees the car explode. So had Claire got out of the car and ran to the bridge like she said, they would have crossed paths. Claire is clearly lying right now, and this is the exact moment Ethan should have known she was a crook. And speaking of being a crook, killing off the IMF team was a massive departure from the TV show, which, as you might imagine, annoyed some of the original TV show fans and even pissed off the TV cast members. But here's what I find interesting. Reza Badi, who directed the most amounts of Mission Impossible TV episodes, was asked to be on set as a consultant. However, Mission Impossible movie director Brian De Palma told him, "Listen, yeah, this ain't gonna be nothing like the show, you know. Furthermore, man ain't got no cappuccino machine, so there's no point you even being here, you get me?" I might have paraphrased that a little, but pretty much. Anyway, Badi then said thanks, left the set, and never came back. Also, bear in mind the only character from the original TV show to be in the movie was Jim Phelps. So from the beginning, there was never any real intention of making a Mission Impossible movie. It was always going to be an action movie with spies and some Mission Impossible references. And honestly, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I ain't mad at it. For me, I mostly just care about two things. Is it still a good movie? And can I find interestingly useless information on it? And yeah, I do think in the end, this is still a good, enjoyable movie. But as for interestingly useless information, how about this? Priokpe is not the official name. The street is actually called Na Priokpe. Now, a long time ago, that street had a moat, but the moat was covered in 1760, and and the street was then named Bestarek Alajic, which translates as in old alleys. Also, sorry if I'm butchering any of these pronunciations. Now after that, between 1845 and 1870, it was called Koloratska Trida, likely named after Count Franz Anton von Kolorat-Liebsteinski, who was a Bohemian nobleman. And then, since 1871, it's been called Na Priokpe. This is what the street looks like in 2024. Now, I can't see a bus stop, and according to Google Gemini, there may have never been a bus stop there. And quite frankly, street corners are terrible places to put bus stops, so just as well. Anyway, now we finally get introduced to the arms dealer Max. Now what you might not know is Max was originally supposed to be played by a man, but Tom Cruise convinced Brian De Palma to get Vanessa Redgrave for the role just to show that go woke, go broke was never a real thing.
32 and 33.
Doesn't mean it's a signal, could just be the hard drive heating up.
Also, this is a radio scanner, not a temperature monitor. Now, to be fair, Max very likely knows how to or has access to people who can turn a radio scanner into a temperature monitor, but this is 1996, not 1896. You can just buy a temperature monitor. Or better yet, use the radio scanner to detect radio signals the floppy disk could be sending. Also, did these guys tracing a signal really point a gun at the cleaning lady and make her carry on vacuuming while they get ready for a potential shootout? She's probably thinking, I do not get paid enough for this. By the way, this lady's name is Jelena Trebika. She was a dancer and theatre actress that occasionally showed up in movies. And from what I can tell, all her movies were filmed in the Czech Republic, but Mission Impossible is the only one to have a non-Czech Republic production company behind it. So here's another change from the TV show. Jim Phelps was not married, and if he was, then he definitely kept his personal business personal like he's supposed to. Anyway, the CIA does allow married couples to continue working there. What they don't typically allow is married couples to be on the same team, especially when one is in a leadership role, as that would be in violation of the nepotism policy. Now, to be fair, the IMF are not actually part of the CIA, so they can have their own rules around relationships within the team, but surely there must have been someone in their organization that was like, dude, come on, you're too old to be out here dying for Nyash.
Fire alarm, Kate.
Do we have to evacuate?
Yeah, you probably should, or at least evacuate the affected and surrounding areas. Why is everyone just carrying on as normal? Whole bunch of people just chilling in the lunchroom? It's kind of like those fire drills they made you do in school where after 2 or 3 you just stop taking them seriously. The teacher be shouting, you have to treat it like a real fire, leave all your belongings behind. Listen, in a real fire, I would most definitely not be leaving my Game Boy behind. Are you mad? Though to be fair, the Game Boy probably could survive a fire. Won't this guy be wondering why his colleague ain't come back? How did they know Dunlow was gonna take his break at this time? Because if Dunlow is the type to take his break at the exact same time every day, even when 4 fire alarms have gone off, then I'm gonna guess he's the type to notice exactly who sits with him and who doesn't, especially when that person is all up in his space. She got her notepad next to his coffee cup and he ain't gonna say nothing? Also, leaving half the coffee in the cup should be against the law. I mean, if nothing else, that alone should be raising some serious concerns. Just because you got it from a cappuccino machine don't mean you can take the piss.
1, 2, 3. Toast.
You know, I've never tried to break into the CIA, but if those sensors are as sensitive as they say, probably should have done the sound test before they got there. Also, cover your nose when you sneeze. What the hell, man? Yeah, Top Cappy did it better. And shouldn't Dunlow, a high-level CIA employee, be noticing Ethan's reflection in the floor? The lack of security cameras in this room is actually accurate. Rooms that contain highly sensitive information wouldn't have security cameras because it could mean that unauthorized people could potentially see that information. But what doesn't make sense is, when did Claire have time to change back into the firefighter outfit? For one thing, she left her firefighter outfit inside the CIA, so did she go back inside? Or did they have another firefighter outfit in the truck that she changed into while they're driving away? And if so, considering fire trucks don't typically have a lot of space to be changing clothes, were her titties on display? Oh, that's why Krieger is smirking. And that's why she's giving him the look, because she probably caught him taking a peek. You see, Ethan and Luther, they were gentlemen. They kept their eyes on the road. but this guy? Ne peut pas lui confiance. Now, not to excuse Krieger for being the one pervert who couldn't control his impulses, but they're in London now, so this is at least some 16 hours or so later. Ignoring the guy is just rude and unproductive. And considering they just pulled off a heist on the CIA, wanting to know what's going on ain't unreasonable behavior. Also, Tom Cruise really did do this sleight of hand with the disc. So Peter Graves, who played Phelps in the TV show, was offered the role of Phelps in the movie, but turned it down for this very reason. Phelps was never a traitor in the original. Martin Landau, who played Roland Hand, also turned down the movie because he didn't like how they killed off the whole IMF team. Now, speaking of Roland Hand, in the TV show, Roland Hand was a master of disguise and mimicry, a smooth talker and an expert at sleight of hand. Sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? I mean, I'm just imagining the script writers of this movie in a room saying, man, we really need a character who is good at disguises. Too bad there's nothing like that at all in the original show. We're just gonna have to make up a whole new character now. So this is Tower Bridge. It's been in operation since 1894 and was designed to open up to allow ships to pass through. Until this day, it still opens up around 800 times a year. However, there is no helicopter landing pads near Tower Bridge. This is actually Pottersfield Park on the south side of the River Thames. Here's the thing though, there is a helipad in Whitechapel at the Royal London Hospital, which is about the same travel time to St Pancras International as Pottersfield Park. St Pancras International is where you'd get a TGV to Paris from. Anyway, I'm not saying they should have taken over a real hospital helipad and let people in need of emergency medical treatment suffer while they shoot a movie scene. I'm just saying, it would make sense.
It's not transmitting.
Try it again. Damn it, I've got to get this through before we hit the channel.
So Max does actually say channel and not tunnel. Channel is an informal way of referring to the Channel Tunnel, and since Max also used the informal preoccupi earlier, this tracks. Also, I get why Ethan dressed up as Phelps to trick Claire because he wasn't sure if she was on the level or not, but it seems the real Phelps was in that same baggage room and knew the fake Phelps was there too, but didn't kill him? Why? Dude had a clear, easy chance to take out Ethan and didn't. And now we got 7 more of these movies. Well, now you know who to thank or blame depending on how you feel about that. Also, Ethan says he knew Phelps was a traitor because he took the Bible from the Drake Hotel he stayed at. But that doesn't mean he's a traitor. That just means he's a low-down, dirty scumbag thief that steals Bibles. They were all in the safe house in Prague before the mission went pear-shaped. Phelps could have left the Bible there when they first arrived. Also, it was a good idea for Ethan to put the glasses with the hidden camera on so that Kitteridge can see that Phelps is still alive. But when was it planned for Kitteridge to have a video watch that was tuned to the same frequency as the glasses and for him to check the watch at the same time Ethan puts on the glasses? Or did they just get lucky? This would have been another good time for Phelps to just shoot Ethan. If he had to, he can take care of Claire later, but killing Ethan, that should be the priority here. Also, we just watched Ethan get his ass kicked by a guy nearly twice his age. Anyway, I think most people know that helicopter wouldn't fit inside a tunnel, or more specifically, it wouldn't be able to fly inside the tunnel because the propeller blades would be too wide. And with the 2 trains passing each other, Krieger died in this scene. I mean, at this moment. Now, what you might not know, the channel is actually 3 tunnels. One for UK to France, one for France to the UK, and a service tunnel in the middle. And that means you wouldn't have 2 trains passing each other like this. Still though, this is a pretty cool scene. It's also interesting that the news reporter said the pilot was killed and no one on the train was hurt, but there was no mention of Jim Phelps, which means they either couldn't find his body or they couldn't find his body. You know what I mean? Anyway, the film ends with Ethan and Luther celebrating Ethan's mum and uncle's name being cleared and Luther being off the disavowed list. Ethan then gets a flight to an unspecified location where he is seemingly given a self-destructing mission tape showing that after 1 hour and 45 minutes, the CIA did not learn their lesson. But that's what I think of Mission Impossible. What do you think of Mission Impossible? Let me know down below, and while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a suggestion if you don't mind.